Yo, it's your boy Augie and welcome to the Comics and Movies Show. On this week's episode, we talk all things Avengers Endgame. So if you haven't seen the movie, stop right here because we're about to get in some heavy ass spoilers. Save this video, go watch the movie and come back. Now, for those of you who've already seen Endgame, let's get started. Alright, so Avengers Endgame, the final movie in the Infinity Saga, better known to many as the MCU. Let me be the first one to tell you this movie is entertainment. It means nothing. This video is also entertainment, and it means nothing. So please, don't get your panties in a bunch over this review, but since we have invested 10 years of our lives with these characters, this means everything. So with that being said, my review is coming from the bias of being an invested fan who loves the MCU and loves this movie. Endgame is great, if not easily top 3 best superhero movies of all time so far. Building on all 20-something movies that came before it, this 3 hours we spend with this film is worth every penny and every second we invested into the MCU. The movie, if you need a score, is a 9 out of 10 for me. 9 out of 10. Like any movie, it has its pros and cons. So, let me tell you the things that I did like. The overall story, when viewed from its entirety, is one that has heart, humor, and packs one hell of a mean punch. The callbacks to movies past, the reconciliation between Tony and Steve, and the build-up to the climax and the climax itself. All of it was great. Rarely does a movie of this scale stick the landing both emotionally and visually, but Endgame does both in grand fashion. The stakes felt real, and every character's arc within this movie, whether big or small, all had a hand in pulling this movie across the finish line. Captain Marvel in this movie was more enjoyable in this than in her own movie. Though used sparingly and as a get out of jail free card, she fits perfectly among the other heroes and Avengers without being overpowered or contrived. The final battle against Thanos and his army was just surreal. Now, I'm sure Kevin Smith, wherever he was at, came in his pants at least 10 times. It was literally a comic book splash page come to life. From Black Panther's royal return to Cap finally wielding Mew Mew to Peter and Tony's emotional reunion, you would be hard pressed to find something you didn't like in the last 45 minutes of this film. But there are some cons and a lot of plot holes that are left unanswered. For me, the greatest sin this movie commits is trying to be too smart for itself. The movie sets up time travel rules that it itself later breaks, sometimes in the very next scene. So here are my issues with Avengers Endgame. First, just how exactly did Captain Marvel know where to find Tony and Nebula? As she states, the universe is huge. So how did she find the needle in the haystack of space? I mean, but that's small compared to the rules that they set for time travel. So the whole plot of this movie is that the surviving Avengers, stricken with grief, want to go back in time, get the Infinity Stones, and use them to undo Thanos' snap. But like Tony says, they run the risk of altering the current timeline. To not do that, they must not influence anything in the past. Just get the stones, come the hell back. The very next scene, we see Bruce Banner spilling the future events to the Ancient One, who is currently in New York guarding the Sanctum Sanctorum from the events of the first Avengers movie. So, wouldn't he just be ruining the future and causing a time rift by telling her what happens in the future? To make matters worse, the Ancient One tells Banner that the universe is kept in balance by the Infinity Stones, and even removing one would cause a splinter in time. But Thanos in the beginning of this movie destroys his stones, and nothing happened. No cosmic rift, no time change. Steve from the future ends up fighting the Avengers Captain America, who thinks Steve from the future is the missing Loki in disguise, which makes total sense, but to gain the upper hand over the past Steve, Rogers tells him, hey, Bucky's alive. See, that's a problem because Steve doesn't know that until the reveal in Winter Soldier. If he gets knowledge that Bucky's alive in the Avengers timeline, he's probably going to go to Nick Fury with this knowledge and try to find Bucky. The events of Winter Soldier has now been undone in the timeline. There is no Winter Soldier movie now. And seriously, where the hell did Loki go? If Loki escapes from Thor during the end of Avengers, that means Thor the Dark World never happens the way it does because he doesn't need the Dark Elves to get another stone for Thanos. Thus, Thor's mom never dies. Another timeline change. Nebula, War Machine, Ronan, and Black Widow all travel back to 2014. Neb and War Machine get dropped off on Morag to get the Power Stone, but apparently the past and future Nebula share some Neuralink that allows the past to see the future's memories. Now, this is just lazy storytelling to just move the plot along, but I will say, since Neb is more machine than person, I can concede that they could be linked to some sort of server, and like two laptops with the same IP address, the home internet system can't decide which IP to pick up and which machine to drop. So, though lazy, I will let it go. So Thanos gets a visual breakdown of his future self and what the Avengers of the future are trying to do. And with future Nebula's memories, he can now travel to the future and kill the Avengers once they get all the stones. Obviously, the Avengers succeed at getting all 6 stones, with Nat sacrificing herself to get the Soul Stone, and Steve and Tony traveling to 1970 to get the Space Stone from S.H.I.E.L.D. after failing to get it from the first Avengers movie. But this is where things get even more crazy. Remember in Infinity War, every time Thanos got a stone, he basically nutted putting the stone in the gauntlet? How then can Iron Man just hold all 6 stones and not die right away? Hell, Peter Quill barely survived touching the Power Stone by himself, and he was half Celestial. And his team had to all join in to distribute the power of the stone. So how did Tony just survive holding all 6 stones? Is the suit special? Is Tony secretly a Celestial? Or is this just another lazy logic to get the impactful fan service moment? I don't know. Couldn't figure it out. Speaking of Power Stones, why did Thanos need to remove the Power Stone to use it to punch Captain Marvel? The stones are always at 100%, so why didn't he just activate the gauntlet and use the stone to punch her? That just confused me, to be honest. And what's with the snapping thing?
Snap your fingers, but do you still? You can do it all by yourself. Let me see you do it. Let me see you do it.
You don't need to snap your fingers to use the Infinity Gauntlet. The snap was just a weird flex by Thanos, because he just wanted to just snap to make his words come true. It wasn't because you need to snap to activate the gauntlet. You never needed to. You just thought about it and the stones did what they wanted to do. Why are we all snapping here? The Hulk literally snaps to bring back the Dusted, both the good and the bad. Remember, it was just 50% of the universe. It didn't discriminate between good people and bad. So in retrospect, the Avengers unleashed more evil into the universe by undusting everyone. But if Hulk's snap was to undust everyone, then what was Tony's snap for? Besides just killing Thanos and his army. They really didn't need to, because the Avengers team was clearly kicking the shit out of that team and on the verge of winning the war, so why did Tony even bother to snap Thanos away? They almost won. And what the hell did they do to Thor? In Infinity War, Stormbreaker was so powerful, it cuts through a full blast from all 6 Infinity Stones. And nearly kills Thanos. But in Endgame, it's like Marvel just updated the game with a nerf patch to Stormbreaker. He could barely even fight Thanos with Stormbreaker. Like, this is the weapon to end all weapons. Thanos should still die within a matter of seconds against Thor. And finally, the biggest plot hole and issue with this movie is the ending. See, after Tony's snap and his death, someone has to go return all 6 stones back to their place in the timeline. Cap obviously volunteers to go, but Bucky already knows he's not coming back. I mean, look at the smirk on his face. He's like, this fool ain't coming back. He's gone. So with all 6 stones and a bunch more Pym particles, Cap goes back in time. But when it's time for him to come back, he never comes back. Instead, Cap returns to the past to go and live and grow old with his love, Peggy Carter. Now, this is sweet and all, and I'm glad Cap finally got the dance he really wanted, but what? See, in the MCU timeline, Peggy marries a dude and has a kid. That kid then grows up and has Sharon Carter, aka Agent 13 from Winter Soldier. That same girl is the girl that Steve was macking on, falling in love and shit with. So if Steve stayed in the past and got married to Peggy, then Sharon Carter doesn't happen. And if she does still happen, that means Steve from Winter Soldier and Civil War was dating his own granddaughter. Now, I love Game of Thrones, but even that is sick. What's worse, this also means that there's a version of Captain America that has been living in the MCU this whole time, simply just watching the actions unfold and doing nothing about it for the last 70 plus years. Either way, this makes no sense and basically negates all the Cap movies that comes after Avengers. Finally, the Clint and Nat battle for who gets to sacrifice himself with the Soul Stone was pretty damn touching, and the rules are clearly stated: a soul for a soul. So how exactly does Cap return the Soul Stone? What, did he just walk up to the Red Skull and just give it back to him like, hey man, thanks for the stone, here you go? If so, then he has to take a soul back with him. Them's the rules. A soul for a soul. So if you give a soul back, you gotta take a soul. And if you want to get a Soul Stone, you gotta give a soul. So if he's returned the Soul Stone, shouldn't he get a soul back? This plot hole is just too glaring for no one at Marvel to have not noticed this. So what really happens to Nat's soul? Or did she go back in time and live with Steve and Peggy in some weird love triangle? These are the plot holes that breaks this movie for me. Where, had it not just tried to set these rules, the movie would have flowed much better because it would just went for a ride. Instead, it tried to be too smart, and in doing so, has created plot holes that itself cannot answer. But that's all the questions and plot holes I found while watching this movie. Did you notice anything else that I didn't? Like I said, this movie is entertaining and hits on all the notes a movie like this needs to hit. But as a comic book reader and moviegoer, these plot holes are I just can't overlook them. See, I used to dismiss Captain Marvel the movie due to his terrible handling of plot holes and retcons. But to be honest, I think everyone needs to see Captain Marvel. Not because it's a good movie, because it's not. It barely passes for a Phase 1 movie. But you need to train your mind to ignore plot holes if you want to enjoy Endgame. And Captain Marvel is the best movie to practice on, because man, is that movie filled with plot holes and retcons. So, like I said, that's my review of Avengers. What do you think? Did you like the movie? Where do you rank it in the MCU? Where do you rank it in the overall comic movie pantheon? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a like and subscribe for more. I'm your boy Augie, and this is the Comics and Movie Show.
He's pretty good at that, right?